All right, ready?
Mm-hmm.
So,
this is episode 15, Surviving Darkness with Heather and Jenny.
way to do the intro today.
No problem. Anyway, it's been, I guess, an interesting week. Jesse.
It just happens. It does. It just comes out.
I've been trying to get stuff out of our other house. We're doing a little bit of a move, and I don't know if maybe it's just the time of the day or if something is actually going on. But when I went to clean stuff out of the house, I was there probably about an hour and a half, and I got very sick to my stomach. Nauseous, face turning bright red, and just did not feel well at all. And then today we went to get the computer and stuff so that we could record, and he started feeling really nauseous while we were there. So I almost feel like
it's
a
another move.
little under attack. Every time we move, it's something.
That's what I was saying. It's another move.
And it's just, I thought that, we pretty much had it under control for the most part. But anyway, that's just something that we've gone through. But I have noticed that over the years, it's not as bad. So there's always that positive. Things aren't as bad, and we recognize what's going on. Like before, I would become like overcome with anger and just have major mood swings, like very, very bad mood swings. And now it's more like I just don't feel well. So I think that that's pretty much what's going on is it don't want us to move right now. It's a little hard when it
because it has to
regain power to come with us.
Yes, it does. Yes.
But I think that before we get all the way out, I'm going to go through the house with the prayers that rout demons, and try to get the things out in a way, and hopefully it doesn't get the strength to keep following.
And anybody that is having issues with anything like finances, anything like that, that's a really good book to get.
It is.
And read through. You can read through everything, but it gives you specific prayers to say and read, and verses to read out loud and everything too, to kind of ward things off.
I do the prayers whether I feel that they really pertain to me or not, because there might be something, because some of it's like generational things, and it might not be so much me dealing with that right that second, but it could be some kind of spirit that is attached that isn't operating at that point. Yeah. So I just go through all of them.
Well, and we know too that the negative spirits, like you said, at any point can rear their ugly head, I guess you'd say. Like it could not be something you're going through at that moment, but like you said, it could be kind of waiting.
It might not be in the forefront, but it might be there, like in the background, operating in the background, and you don't really realize it because it's not right there in front of you.
And it's kind of like with the spirits that, or the spirit or whatever that followed us too. We might not have always known it from the very beginning, but it was there. And eventually it would get its power and start showing itself again at the different houses.
Over the years, though, it hasn't really had the strength that it did when it first started out. It's like it just keeps getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And it's probably because we don't feed it. We don't feed it with the fear. We don't feed it with like a constant battle. We don't even really acknowledge it most of the time that it's even there. We just ignore.
Right.
And that seems to have been the biggest help. I wouldn't say like that would be your best bet if it's very active and causing harm. I think it would be best to get someone to pray over your home and try to pray it out and stuff like that. But it does tend to get weaker, but ignoring it when it's like that active probably wouldn't be your best or
Right.
your safest route.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And my youngest son that's in here today has had lots of experience has had lots of experience with dealing with the stuff. He's the one who is able to see the things and all, and I think that here recently he has gotten to the point of more ignoring rather than going straight at and battling.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in detail in a later episode, but yeah, I just sleep with my feet off the bed most of the time.
Well, I guess if that works.
Everybody thinks I'm crazy because I sleep with my feet off the bed. They're like, wow, it's like if something's going to grab me, it'll grab my feet. It's done it before, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
Right.
look
Why
at
would
it.
you not sleep with it under the covers, though?
My feet?
Yeah.
Because everybody does that. I don't
You
know.
won't. It doesn't make you feel more protected.
I don't want to feel protected. I want it to know that I don't care. Grab them.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
Grab
I
my
gotcha.
feet.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Okay.
Kind of what you do.
Kind of so you know its presence is there, which you sense it anyway. But but
But
don't scare you. Just kind of just do it, right?
Don't grab me by the head, by my hair, or my head, or anything. You got my feet.
Yeah, just grab my feet. Yes.
I guess we all deal with things differently. Which I sleep with my foot over the edge of the bed, but not for that
the
reason.
only reason I specifically said that is because everybody thinks I'm crazy for doing it. I was like, I don't know. You should be worried about it. No, I don't.
If it's going to bump something, it's going to bump your foot before it actually gets to the bed.
No, just grab my foot. They like grabbing feet, apparently. I don't know.
Oh.
I always hear about that. Them grabbing your legs.
They
and stuff.
do, and maybe it's because it's a really sensitive part of your body.
I don't know. Maybe it's where it grounds you.
That's what I was gonna say because
What you
that's
gonna do? Run?
so yeah.
Didn't think about that, but I guess. I don't guess I ever really thought about where it grabs you because I haven't really had that experience of having my feet grabbed. But things that we've read and stuff, that is sort of what
It does.
what they do. They grab your feet.
My husband has never really experienced anything like nothing like we have ever. But he told me about a time when he lived by himself, and he said that he was awake and felt something grab his feet and slide him down the bed. And he said, I know I was awake when this happened. And he said, it scared me to death. I'd have to have him remind me of the story, but that's what, he said. He said, I thought I was dreaming, but I was not dreaming. I was awake. And that is before he ever knew anything about us. So that being said, I just wonder if, that has happened to people and how many people have experienced something like that, knowing that they were awake and not knowing exactly what it was,
Right.
or people being somewhere and feeling something weird in a different place or something like that and not realizing, just
That is a spiritual thing.
yes, yeah.
Just having that little bit of a creep me out feeling.
Yes.
And not really putting your finger on exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everybody deals with demonic presences.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some join them and some battle them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're probably everywhere and everybody's dealing with them. They just don't realize what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think that they have Casper the Friendly Ghost in their home, and there's no such thing as far as I'm concerned.
When I
Because-
was talking yesterday to, I'd gone and gotten my hair done, and the girls were talking about there being they called it the salon ghost that walks around upstairs. And so then we got to talking about some of the things that we'd gone through because one of the girls there had no idea. And so in the middle of talking about it, I said out loud, that does not give you any power in here whatsoever because we're talking about this, like don't start with any negativity. Don't start bringing anything down on these girls, because a lot of times when you talk about other things like that, it does feed into that. And that's exactly what I said out loud, because I was like, no, you are not getting any power from us talking about this.
Right.
That does not give you any opportunity to try to scare them, in a very dramatic way, because that's what they do sometimes.
I'm going to ask, I guess, both of you, because I've noticed that I don't really realize what's going on until after the fact. Like me feeling bad at the house, cleaning stuff up. I didn't even realize that that's probably what it was until probably an hour or so after the fact. I guess I would rather be able to know right then and put a stop to it and be like, hey, but for some reason it's like I can't think at that point. I don't know if it's because I'm nauseous and not feeling well that I can't pinpoint that this is what's causing it. It's after I'm out of that situation and out of that setting. So do you all do that?
I think that because we have health issues already, we have the stomach issues, the nervous stomachs, things like that we just kind of attribute it to that at first, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is what's going on. Hold on. Like a lot of times mine hit, like things will hit me Saturday night, before church on Sunday or,
yes. Or Sunday morning.
Yes. Or, something will happen on Wednesdays, and a lot of times it's fighting with my little guy, and that keeps us from going to church on Wednesday nights, because I do not do well if I am not going to like church and being around other people that have the common goal of worshiping God with me, and so that's what it does, is it keeps me away. And I guess that's what I'm saying, is like, to answer your question, I don't realize that that's what's going on until afterwards, because I'm like, oh, it's just my stomach, you know what I mean? Or it's just, just my back or whatever. Or I'm just getting a migraine, or I have a migraine. And then I start watching the service on Sunday morning, and I'm like, I should have been there. You know what I mean? I should have like fought through this and been there. And then I realized that it was an attack. Yeah, that it was an attack. So I can see how you wouldn't know it at the very beginning. Just not think about it at the very beginning.
And then I start questioning my relationship with God. And that's bad, because I feel like I want that relationship that is so close to God that it's like he tells me what's going on. Like he lets me know during that time what's going on so that I can fight at that time.
Well, then maybe when you start feeling that way, now that now that it's actually been put in your head, maybe that is God saying, hello, this is what's going on. So maybe when you go back there, because you have to move the rest of your stuff out, you're more aware of it now. So you start praying before you get in there. Or as soon as you start feeling that, you're like, no, we're not doing this, Right. So maybe that is God's way of making you aware of this now at this point.
That's true. I hadn't thought of it that way. But then, that's the enemy coming at you too. Yeah, if you had a close relationship with God, you would realize at that time.
And not let me get so far.
Yeah. Not later.
Yeah.
You would know what to do at that time. You would recognize what's going on if you had a better relationship with God. So yes, we have fought for many years, and we still learn as we go.
So we talked about this one and having all the issues with school. And so anyway, when we had said that you weren't aware, like Heather wasn't aware of what was going on with the youngest son when he was fighting not to go to school. At that point, did you actually like kind of know all that was going on, or were you starting to be able to feel things, and then, or had you started seeing things and just didn't know how to say it? Or so I guess, do you know what I'm saying? Like how?
I think it was something completely different than that.
Okay.
I don't remember anything during that time. I don't remember what I did with my days or anything like that. I think it didn't want me to leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was beyond my control.
Well, I don't know if he wasn't in here when we did that episode.
It was
the last week.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about how when you would try to leave the house, you would get like a severe headache, nausea, and it was like the further we got away from the house, the worse pain you were in. But once we got back to the house, the headache would go away.
Mm-hmm.
And how that it had a hold on you like that. Did you realize at that point that that's what was going on?
Or did you just know that something wasn't right with you and you didn't feel right?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
As far as knowing something was there, there's different levels of feeling is how I describe it. But this was just kind of a broad feeling.
Okay.
So it just kind of felt like there was something bad, but it didn't feel like I was being attacked. And I think that was kind of the point. I knew something was there, but I didn't think that was what was doing it. I'd felt that since I was a kid. It's been there for most of my life. First time I saw it, I was what, 5?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around.
5, 6? Because it was right after we moved to that house. So I didn't see anything odd about it.
It's still just, you and I have talked about this. It still just blows my mind that, I mean, we've never had, drawn it out or whatever, like literally on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But to describe the thing that I had seen when I was like 15, 16, whatever, somewhere along in there, the cloaked figure was one of the first things you saw. And you knew nothing about what I had seen.
With you being an adult now, do you feel like me teaching you like Bible verses, me letting you know what was going on and how to fight and things like that, do you think that helped you, or do you think it fed into what was going on with you? Does that make sense? Do you think that it helped you or hurt you?
In the long run, helped me. Short term, probably hurt me. Every time I'd try and use it, it would retaliate harder, and I couldn't understand why. You taught me a lot of prayers. I would say them while you were at work. I would throw up. I'd get sick. One day, I made it out of the house, and you made me say some prayer. You repeat after me, and you would always do that. And I was crying by the time we reached the end of the street. You took me home. I went in the bathroom and threw up, hard. So it was almost as if I was being punished for doing that.
You were.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how they operate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that helped a lot. And that book that y'all were talking about earlier, I've used that. You gave me one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have multiple or if that's the one that's in the closet at the house. And I have a friend who has actually used that. And it worked. Because he'd never seen anything like that in his life. And he noticed something. So I brought the book to him and he did. And I was there and sure enough, you could feel it going from one room to another.
You can when you're trying,
It's
when
like
you're battling.
chasing it.
Yes. And finally it has to give in because you've done covered every room.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard of that book until one of the friends that I worked with, who has been, a Christian all of her life. And her kids were raised in church and Christian school, everything like that. And they started battling a demonic presence in their house. And so she was telling me about it as we were talking about you all and the circumstances that y'all were going through, and had told me about it. And so anyway, I let you borrow it because you couldn't find yours at that time.
When you mentioned it, I did have it, but I don't think I had read it. Because I was like, I think I have that book.
You did, yeah, now that I said that.
And I hadn't read it.
Because I had gotten it for you to borrow. And when I told you about it, yes, that's exactly
And I was like,
what
I think
happened.
I have that one. And I mean, I had a lot of books, but I hadn't really read all of them. And I was like, wait, I do have that one. So I went home and looked at it and just started going over the prayers. And the whole atmosphere changes when you're reading those.
And I think it's
prayers.
because it's like a directed reading.
It is.
Like specific to what it is that you're going through at that time.
And praying it out loud. I mean,
Mhm.
you're saying it out loud. So the enemy hears exactly what you're saying.
Realistically, do yourself a favor. If you sense anything like that, read the whole book.
Right.
Because if it's not attacking that now, it will later.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Trust me.
Right. Well, that's what we were saying. Like, it might not be in the forefront right now, but it could be in the background operating.
Yeah. I'll link that book on the website and in the bio of the episodes, because it is a good book.
Yes, it is very good. At any point, like you said, like we said, for anything, it's a little book, but there is so
Power.
much, in that.
And it's like $10 on Amazon. I think that's probably one of the best $10 you can spend.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
And it's not just something that you read like once or twice. It's something that you continuously read through your lives, whatever you're going through, just it has all these different things to read about.
As we've seen over the years, just because it's not active right now doesn't mean it's like completely gone away. It's like a constant. It's a constant battle.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're living a Christian life, you better expect a constant battle. I mean, I can't say, oh yeah, it's definitely that same demon, but they have friends.
They do. Yeah.
And different times of your life can be a different battle, can be a different demonic presence, because the other book, like the two spiritual warfare books for me, are the Prayers That Rout Demons and Strong Man. That Strong Man book, it breaks down the behaviors for every single spirit. And it even tells you when you bind something, you have to loose something in its place. And it tells you, bind this spirit, but release this in its place. Like when you sweep your house, you got to fill it with something good.
Mm-hmm.
If not, then, it comes back in and brings 7 more with it.
Right.
So with that, when you bind something, and you have to put something else to fill that spot. So it'll tell you like gifts of the spirit. You bind like the spirit of bondage, and you release like freedom, or you release something in its place. So that book really breaks down.
So you have control of what it is that's leaving and what it is that's being replaced, what it's being replaced with.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly. You don't want to leave that space open, because then, like I said, it allows that to come back in and bring 7 more with it.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've really got a battle on your hands.
Yes.
So that book and the Strong Man book and that one are the ones that I use a whole lot when it comes to spiritual warfare.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very knowledgeable and very powerful books.
Yes. Yes. One of the girl that I was talking to yesterday that didn't know about, my story, our story, I'm sorry, not just mine, but our story. She said, well, did you all try to get someone to come in to like cleanse your house, or, use sage and bless your house? And I was like, it wasn't like this at that time. It was not. Like now you hear more about things like that, because there have been shows or whatever, on TV that acknowledge paranormal activity or whatever, demonic forces and things. Then it was not like that. You didn't speak about that stuff at
because
that
you
time.
would have wound up in a mental hospital.
Yes, because it was not acknowledged, And that's what I told her. I said, our dad had said that he had gotten, and I said quotation marks, holy water. And it's quite possible that that's what it was. I don't know. I really don't know. But, as for having someone to come in and pray over the house or anything like that, no.
And we were told that he had reached out to someone.
Yeah.
That was a preacher or a priest or something. I don't know. And they had said it was just too strong, which I don't know. I don't feel that I could ever look at someone and say, what you've got going on is too strong. As a minister or as a priest, I just can't imagine saying that to someone when I'm supposed to be operating in the power of God, which is stronger than anything.
Well, like whenever we were talking, I don't want to say
I got my preaching hand going,
but we had talked about, about our friend, and we ended up going to her house and praying. It wasn't even, we kind of were nervous about it because we didn't want something to become attached to us from there, but at the same time, it was like, no, we're okay. We're going to go do this together. And knowing that she was a Christian also and was, active in church and believed in God, and that the three of us together praying, being together to fight this being that was in her house, that we were going to be okay. We were going to be protected. And we were.
I think my problem, and I mean, it could be a curse, it could be a blessing, is when I see a need, I don't even think about me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about that, it's going to attach to me, which I do pray, and I do go in and operate in the Spirit of God and operate with the Holy Spirit and things like that. But it's like there's a need there that needs met.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think about.
I also think it goes back to the fact that we have all literally faced demons, like literally in person.
Yes.
And you're like, you know what? I don't care anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that I don't care. It's that I know your power and I know God's power. And I know that is much better. God's is so much more powerful than yours.
Right.
And I think that's how I feel.
Right.
And I feel like even with things in life, I'm not saying that this is the right approach to things, but as I get older, I get hot-headed a lot quicker, and I've been in some not so good situations, and probably if they would have escalated, I probably would have gotten my rear end kicked because I've just stood up to men, I mean, but it's also like, you know what? You really don't scare me. You're a person. You're human. You don't scare me because I've seen 1,000 times worse than you.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying that's the right attitude to have, but at the same time, when you seriously look evil in the face on a daily or, at least
every other day basis,
yes, then it's like, I don't care.
Who are
what
you?
I mean? Yeah, exactly. And that's how I feel sometimes, And like I said, I know that's not the right attitude to have, but at the same time, it's like, people don't scare me anymore. Like, their actions do, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you get creepy feelings from people and everything, but at the same time, it's like, nothing that you're doing to me is anything worse than I've already been through.
Right.
Like, just not.
Right.
So go ahead, try, do whatever you're going to do. It's fine.
And that goes back into the whole fight or flight thing. We don't have the flight part.
Yeah, no.
Everything's a fight.
Because we weren't able to.
No, we weren't. Leaving, getting away, running was not an option.
Mm-mm.
So our minds just aren't really wired for running.
No. Mm-mm.
I've gotten a little bit better as I've gotten older and tried to walk away from situations and maybe not put my 2 cents in and just be like, whatever, it's not worth it. But it's taken a whole lot of effort and just telling myself, no, this ain't your monkey, it ain't your circus, ain't whatever that saying is, but it's not.
I'm a monkey, not my circus.
Yes. It's not my problem. I've got other things to worry about and I just don't have time for this one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of just for my own peace of mind, picking my battles. And back to what I was asking you too, Jesse. Like your dad was more of a ignore everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that approach would have helped to not feed into it?
No.
Sometimes it does now, right?
It does now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a different backing behind it. I ignore it now because I'm not scared of it.
Right.
If I ignored it then, I'd still be scared of it. I'd just ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And that amazes me that you had your dealings.
My oldest son.
And I guess had his.
And yours are very graphic.
Mm-hmm.
And we all lived in the same house, but your dad never saw anything. He never, even when I tried to explain what was going on, And he was raised in a ministry that they operate in battling those things. They don't just ignore it. But he just didn't, I don't know if it had blinders on him and he couldn't see it or didn't want to see it.
Probably a little bit of both, but also what we're dealing with is a pretty mean thing. And for anybody that does listen that deals with this stuff, if your kids see things and you don't, you need to get it away from that, because it takes a sick being to attack a child instead of an adult. Children are so much stronger when it comes to that stuff than adults are. They don't realize. But especially when it goes after a kid, that is something that is going to ruin households. That is going to ruin marriages. That is going to ruin futures if you don't take care of that.
And that's what I was going to say, was it was working in your house against you and your husband at that time.
Right.
But he didn't realize that that's what was going on.
No.
And that's not a bad thing towards him.
No.
You know, we're not saying anything bad about him.
It didn't even let him know that it even existed until I was married to someone else and he came over to help get stuff out of a house that we were moving out of because I had left the key there with him. And then he heard it. Then he knew. But it was like, I don't know, 3-4 years after we were divorced before it finally let him know that it was real.
But he knew when you started talking to him about seeing things. He didn't doubt you, though, right?
He never told me it wasn't real. He just would be like, well, I'd just ignore it. And I never understood that, and especially with my mom being the exact opposite. That thing is mean, and it really grinds at marriages. I think if it wasn't there, they might not have ever split. And I know that sounds bad, but might be true.
But you've seen how it operates, too.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know.
And
you know, like you said, it tears at families.
It's hard. It's hard to fight something spiritual, something evil like that, and then feel like you're fighting your husband too. I mean, I shouldn't have had to fight him over it. I should have had, even if he didn't believe in it, enough backing instead of being put down or ridiculed or saying, you know what, you're just feeding this into your kids and you're putting this in your kids' heads and stuff like that. I don't recall ever mentioning anything to the kids about any of that kind of stuff until they started telling me what they were seeing, what they were hearing, what they were experiencing. And then I was like, no, you're not going to go through all that I went through. I will not allow it to torture you the way I was tortured for years. And in so many ways, they weren't tortured the way we were tortured for so many years. And I didn't have my door closed and do not disturb on my door.
Right.
If they had issues, they knew good and well that they could holler for me, and I wasn't going to just go in there and say, okay, that's enough. Just go to sleep.
Right.
It ain't nothing. Just go to sleep. If they were legitimately scared, there was something they were scared of.
But he also wasn't backing you because that's how it was operating through him.
Right.
Because that was its goal, was to end your marriage and your family.
Right.
And so therefore he was, this, and we know how that is. That was putting things in his head to make it difficult for him to be like, okay, wait a minute. I hear what they're saying and I hear what you're saying. So maybe I need to have a different view on this. He may not have been able to have a different view on it at that time.
Yeah.
Because of the way that it was working.
Right.
And he
wasn't in church and had that relationship with God either.
Right. And had not for a very, very, very long time.
Right. So that, I think, had a lot to do with it. Because, I mean, the Bible says if you're not for me, you're against me. So basically, he was on the side of evil, even though he wasn't an evil person.
Right,
I'm not going to say that.
Yes.
But if you're not fighting against it, you're joining it. So it was almost like I had like a whole team against me.
Right.
And I'm trying to protect my kids, and I was going to protect them at all costs. It didn't matter. It did not matter. They were not going to be done the way we were done.
Because, go ahead.
I think it also has to do with how he was raised in church, though. Because by his definition, God wouldn't let that happen.
True.
That stuff wouldn't be there. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think that he thought you were causing us to see stuff. We're kids. We're impressionable. We're going to link things together. I don't necessarily think he was against it. I just think that he thought you were crazy. And that's what it wanted.
Right.
It is. Yeah.
It
exactly.
is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's true.
I think that's why, too, there's sometimes with our dad, that's why I have so much conflict with the way that I feel. And that's why I have to say it's on a daily basis, because I know the way, like, as we're just talking about this and how much I still love your dad, your ex-husband, and he is a really good person, and how when you're in the middle of these situations, just how crazy your mind gets, you know? And so, yes, there are days when I'm like, I have no doubt that my dad had no idea of right from wrong, because he was not himself, you know?
Right.
There were definitely times when I feel like for days at a time that he was controlled. It wasn't just 5 minutes, you know what I mean? Like, and I know you don't believe that either. I'm just saying, you know. But so when I think about that, and I know that most of the time he was a dad that loved us, you know, the majority of the time. But then there, you know, the next day I think about everything that happened, and I'm like, I still would never have let that happen to my kid. You know, I just wouldn't have. So how could you do that? You know, I mean, so that's why I feel so conflicted, because I do know how it messes with the mind. Even like we're just talking about with your family.
Right. And I was so high strung and still angry. I was still trying to learn how to deal.
It's hard. I have an almost 5-year-old myself, and having two close in age, two boys at that age makes you more high strung, just because of the situation that you're in, because they're boys, they're kids, and they're trying to figure themselves out and everything else. And
I always saw every situation as bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they're outside riding their bike, they have to have a helmet on. Otherwise, they're going to fall and bust their heads open.
Mm-hmm.
I almost felt like everything that they were doing, that evil entity was going to do something that was going to cause major harm or kill them.
Because that's what was drilled in our heads all the time growing up.
So I was excessive with that stuff. And I realize that now. And like my anger, I feel like we didn't learn how to deal with emotions, because we had to stuff them so much. So during my first marriage, I feel like I was trying to learn how to deal with emotions and not everything be anger. Mm-hmm. Because that was how all of my emotions came out, was anger. And I would feel like a rabid animal sometimes. It was like my brain wasn't working right. And a lot of that was hormonal. It was before, like, hysterectomy. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was, like, imbalances there.
Right.
But I would feel like I was totally out of control mentally. It was like I was overcome with so much anger. There was no talking to me. There was no reasoning with me. I was just mad. Mm-hmm. And I think I have mellowed out over the years. So, I mean, not only are my ex-husband, my husband at the time, and my kids dealing with a mom and wife that is like paranoid pretty much, that every bad thing that can happen is like exaggerated happening. Mm-hmm. But I'm also angry. I'm trying to, my hurt, when you hurt my feelings, I'm not going to cry. I'm going to be angry.
Right.
Everything was anger. So, I mean, a lot of the issues were me and me trying to learn how to express emotions correctly
Mm-hmm.
and not see everything as catastrophic. My kids can ride a bike. That doesn't mean they're going to have their heads split open because they're riding a bike. But that in my head, that's what I saw. I saw all of the horrible things that were going to happen because it couldn't just be a scraped knee.
Right.
It just couldn't. In my mind, it couldn't be something that simple. It was no, you can't do that because in my head, I saw the worst outcome. So I think that had a lot to do with, and that could be why my first husband thought that I was feeding into the whole thing and telling the kids stuff, and they're believing and seeing this because I've said this or I've done that because of the exaggeration of the anger and the things that I was afraid would happen.
So your overreaction was feeding into their
Fear.
trauma.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
is kind of what he saw it as.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
At that time. Yeah.
And he was a good guy, but he wasn't the best with understanding other people's feelings.
Right.
He still isn't.
Right. I mean, it was like, okay.
Yeah.
Sort of like your husband. Okay.
Yeah. But mine does come back later.
Right,
And like,
and say
let's talk
something.
about this. Or, I understand what you're saying. This is where I'm coming from. And I am the one that is more stubborn.
Right.
And I'm not proud of that. I'm just stating a fact,
Right.
So, yeah. And because for me, and this is, again, I am not saying this is the right way to be by any means whatsoever. But like you said, we were never allowed to really show a lot of emotion with what was going on, to have a release of everything that was going on. You couldn't show fear. You weren't supposed to show fear, or you weren't supposed to be upset over the things that were happening, because that just gave it more power. And so now it's like, okay, well, you know what? We're getting too far into this fight or this conversation or whatever. I'm done. And because, and you can't be that way. You can't. Like, I know this, and this is something that I'm trying to work on. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I've reached my limit. I'm done. I'm tapped out. I'm done, And I feel like that's because we never had the chance to just totally head on, fight or go work through an issue, a whole total issue, when we were, the whole time we were growing up. It was like, no, sorry, this is just the way that it is. You're going to have to accept that that's the way that it is. You're going to have to act like you like it, regardless of the situation and whatever happens and whatever this makes happen. You have to like it. You have to act like you like it. And that's just it. So when something comes up, it's some type of conflict. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I don't feel that way. I'm not going to feel that way. End of story.
Right. Whereas I was more like, nails coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to fight about this. And then when I've got by myself and alone, I was like, why was that blown up that bad? Because it really shouldn't have gone that far. And then I would feel guilty. And I was the type, I would apologize even if I knew that I wasn't wrong, because I would rather apologize for something.
You were never wrong.
Exactly. But anyway, I would rather apologize and try to get the tension out of the air than try to stay in that tension.
Mm-hmm.
It was like,
I don't stay.
well,
I walk out. and then, eventually we may come back to it and we may talk about it. You know, it may be a couple of days and we may talk about it, but sometimes I may be like, no, I let's not bring it back up. We're good, you know, and we just move on. And that's, like I said, that's how I deal with it. It might not be the right way. Right. But I guess that's how I've kind of made it this far, you know? So.
But the problem is like me waiting and apologizing after the fact and stuff, it didn't change the damage that was already done. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see what was going on at that time when we're fighting over something so stupid.
Right.
And later on, it's like, I can't believe that we haven't talked in like an hour, that we're fighting over something so stupid, so hard, and it didn't even matter.
And people don't realize that these are things that happen in a marriage. Like, there are real things that happen in a marriage. And Satan is out to destroy
marriage.
And so people who don't have the knowledge to acknowledge what is going on, and the way that the world is now, Satan is so prevalent in everything. And that's why there is, so many things going on. There's so many divorces, so many broken up homes and things like that, because he's at work a lot. And, people are straying from church. And, even just COVID, calls people to not be in church. Right. And it's easy when you aren't allowed to go to church to sit at home and watch it. And, and that's why I said earlier, I have to physically be in church or I will drift like really, really bad. And I know this in my head. I know this. And so and some people don't. Some people, have physical reasons they are not able to attend, and that's perfectly fine. Right. They may read their Bible every day, all day long, and have the closest relationship with God. And I just personally cannot do that. It doesn't work for me,
I can't either.
And so, but there's so many people that don't know that are just in relationships, and 2 years into the marriage, it's like, oh my gosh, this is too much like work, and I don't want to do that. And here comes somebody else, and Satan's like, whoop, yep, there you go, pack up your kids, or don't pack up your kids and leave, and that's
There's a whole lot of don't pack up your kids anymore.
Yeah, and that's what happens, that people don't understand that because they don't have any background.
And it's a cater to yourself kind of world.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think I want to be a mom anymore. Here you go, you can have them.
Yeah.
Or a dad. Mm-hmm. I don't think I want to be a dad anymore. Here.
Yeah.
I think I'll just step on out.
Yeah, and that's...
Y'all have fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is. I want to do what I feel like I want to do right now. Mm-hmm. And and it's even in like the young people too. Mm-hmm. And the parents catering to that. Oh, you don't want to do that? Okay, you don't have to. Mm-hmm. No. It was, you're going to do that. Especially,
and that's why one of God's commandments is to obey your parents. Because,
and that made it hard too.
Yes,
because you're supposed to respect, honor, obey your parents, and it's so hard to not beat yourself up for being angry at a parent, mm-hmm. It's almost like they're supposed to lead you in the right direction. And it's hard to honor someone who caused so much destruction.
Yeah. Yes.
But as a person, you feel, it's just a battle. It's a battle with feelings about mm-hmm. that person. You love them because it was your dad, mm-hmm. but you didn't love any of the actions. Maybe that's the easiest way to put it. And there's not much respect.
Right.
it's hard to respect someone who caused so much damage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, love them, yeah. But then it's just a battle, because love and trust should go hand in hand. If you don't love someone, or you can't love someone that you don't trust,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't trust someone if you don't love them, and it's hard to say, yeah, I loved him or love him or don't love him or whatever, because that trust and that respect and stuff isn't really there. You respect the title,
Right.
but not the person.
Mm-hmm.
You love the title, Dad. I love my dad. But you don't love the actions
Right.
that were portrayed. So it's hard. It's really hard to.
And what makes it hard too is 90% of the actions were negative.
Right.
10% of them were loving. And, you know, we do know that at some point he loved us, and he tried to show us that,
Right.
you know, but then there were so many other things that just kind of compiled on top of that, and that's what you think about.
Right.
So
Right. It's
maybe if we had more years of,
the good person.
yes, of him turning his life around and things like that, and, you know, and
It would overshadow the bad, but we didn't.
no. And yeah, so I think that that's why it's hard for me, and I'm sure for you, and that's why I say it's daily, because I don't know, you know, like sometimes, yes, I forgive everything that went on, and I do know that there was something else there, but it's just hard because the next day it may be, you know what, I'm having some sort of feeling today, and it has to go back to what I went through, and that is because of him.
Right.
So that's why it's a daily battle.
Right.
So,
Well, I was hoping to sort of keep it positive. I guess it sort of was positive somewhat. I mean, we did talk about ways to battle. That's a positive. But yeah, so that we'll have the links, I guess, to the books or book or whatever on there, and we'll just go ahead and finish up for this week. But we'll definitely have the name of that book, and I feel like we sort of gave people some ammunition today as to how to fight, how to recognize what's going on. And a lot of times those feelings may not be so much, especially if you can't pinpoint why you're feeling that way. It could be a presence that is influencing how you're feeling.
and it's something that it has made me think too, you know, because I have definitely been more stressed because we do have a little one in the picture, and that just makes anything more stressful. But then we've also had more fights in the last few years than we ever had, you know, and that just makes me think too that, yeah, you know, I need to acknowledge that too.
And I feel like just since we've started doing the podcast, it's been a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one struggle after another. And I know it's just the enemy trying to stop us, because there are people reaching out and saying, hey, I've gone through similar what you've gone through. And I appreciate the fact that you're talking about it, because that sort of makes me feel like I could talk about it eventually. So I know that there are people that we're reaching, that it is helping.
Yes.
And I know that the enemy doesn't want that. He doesn't want anything that's going to help people,
Right.
because he's out to kill, steal, and destroy. So,
Well, just me. It's helped me because I've opened up more than I ever have.
right.
Just doing this. And because just a year ago, even with therapy, I wasn't to the point where I could talk about everything that I've talked about now.
Right.
And so, yeah, of course it's going to fight us, because this is a positive thing.
Right.
Even for me personally, it is, you know, so.
And we know we have to be on the right track and doing the right thing, or we wouldn't have opposition.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you guys for listening again. And thank you for sharing your stuff too.
Do a little more later.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready. And we can always start talking to you. Like we
can always just yank you in.
Yeah, start talking to
So
me.
yes.
Slowly work it in.
Yes. And that's
But
our
I know-
plan too. We still
Right.
haven't been able to get some of our family members on that have wanted to
Share their stories.
Yeah, because of different circumstances that have come up. And of course that's just what
the enemy does.
Yes. And so it will happen. It's we're not giving up on that. So, and if not, then something else will take that place because this is going to be a continued thing.
Right.
So,
all right. Well, you all have a good week and we'll tune back in next week.